Figures recently released by the National Health Service have shown that biting incidents by dogs have risen sharply over the last 10 years. Apparently, these figures only include those people admitted to hospital after reporting to accident and emergency, and not those who are treated and sent home. This means the actual figure and percentage is likely to be much higher. The immediate reaction of those involved in rehoming dogs is that this is due to the increased number of dogs being used for fighting and as protection dogs by individuals who want to look tough on the streets. To some extent this may be true, but I believe the real reason is much more to do with society's attitude and approach to dog training, an approach which has undergone a significant change, coincidentally, over the last 10 years. Let me explain. At one time, the Barbara Woodhouse School of Dog Training reigned supreme. The owner had to be in charge, and the dog had to be forced into subservience by recognizing its owner as its pack leader. The theory is based on what has been perceived by researchers as the behaviour of wolves in the wild, although it has since become clear that most of that research was carried out with wolves who were not truly wild and did not have to compete for food. What was not recognised were the immense changes which had taken place in the behaviour of dogs as a result of their being domesticated. The DNA may have remained the same, but the subtle changes in behaviour as a result of selective breeding had not been taken into account. Added to this was the work by Karen Pryor and many others that showed the effectiveness of what is called positive reinforcement. That is, if you reward the behaviour you want, the animal will quickly continue to behave in that way rather than behave badly. As a teacher, I know that if you encourage pupils, you get better results than beating them, and that one of the most powerful forces in education is not punishment but the withdrawal of praise. The principle is the same, although we have to recognise that there are circumstances when it is not enough, as we shall see. Personally, I accept and use positive reinforcement, and there is no doubt that it is extremely effective, as can be seen by such disciplines as heel work to music, where its magic is so clearly demonstrated. If you bring a puppy up using this approach, you will almost certainly have a well-behaved and well-socialised adult dog, which will be a pleasure to own. However, dogs behave well for one of two reasons. They are either selectively bred to behave in a certain way, as can be seen in the Border Collie, many gun dogs, and the work of guide dogs for the blind, who have many generations of dogs bred to be ideally suited to their work. Or they are well trained by their breeders and their owners using the positive reinforcement techniques which we are speaking about, and which are described in many books and used by many behaviourists. But as always, with changes in perception, the pendulum tends to swing too far, and this has resulted in many canine behaviourists rejecting any suggestion that a dog should be subjected to negative reinforcement. And some believe that even raising your voice to draw a dog's attention to its unacceptable behaviour is tantamount to cruelty. A recent statement by an organisation called the Dog Welfare Organisation tends towards this view. It calls what I have referred to as negative reinforcement aversive training techniques, and include choke chains, used by guide dogs for the blind incidentally, as well as many in the show world and KC registered trainers, among the unacceptable, unpleasant stimuli used to inhibit behaviour. I do not and would not condone any form of cruelty in ensuring a dog behaves acceptably, but the thinking behind the Dog Welfare Organisation is naive and makes the assumption that all dogs and all antisocial behaviour can be treated using positive reinforcement, what is often called reward-based training. I am afraid this is simply not the case. The reason is not because positive reward-based training does not work, it most certainly does, but that many dogs in the community become adults with ingrained bad habits because their owners have allowed them to behave in a way which is not acceptable and have not encouraged the dogs to behave well through proper training. It is these dogs that cause the problems, and these dogs which are mostly responsible for the rising biting incidents, and, incidentally, clogging up the rehoming system in our rescue kennels. I think we have to recognise that any learning experience is not necessarily comfortable. Ask any student preparing for examinations. Of course, it is better if learning is fun, and the learner is highly motivated, but to achieve anything worthwhile requires hard work on someone's part and a degree of self-discipline, whether self or externally imposed. It is essential if progress towards any skill is to be made. And if there are bad habits, then the demands are inevitably increased. Think of giving up smoking or dieting, and remember, a dog does not have that sort of personal peer motivation and pressure. This is not to say that the negative equipment and procedures, which includes prong collars, electric shock collars and pinning to the ground, named by the Dog Welfare Association, are acceptable. But to condemn an effective trainer such as Cesar Millan, and by implication many others such as Mick Martin in the UK, who deal with dogs which have behaviours which are exceptionally difficult to modify, is misleading and counterproductive. In my view, it is no coincidence there are no DVDs showing really difficult dogs being rehabilitated by positive reinforcement, while there are many which show effective training using other techniques which, I must emphasise, are neither cruel nor unusual. The press release states that a number of scientific studies have found an association between the use of aversive training techniques and the occurrence of undesired behaviours in dogs. There are certainly some such studies, but the information I have about them is that scientific is a misnomer, that they have not been peer-reviewed, and that there are no links to them on the organisation's website at www.dogwelfarecampaign.org. The answer, of course, is, as always, the education of breeders and pet owners to ensure dogs are properly socialised from the nest. This is where the focus of these organisations should be.